Welcome. This is the Late Late Show with VT, where views with security and law are being provided to you, the public. So we have been reading um, in consideration of time, and because the book is really relevant and specific to our kidnapping case that we're still experiencing now. We've taken the time to complete it in its entirety. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that one sitting, but this is the third show where we have addressed um, our current challenge with the book Down the Rabbit Hole, Curious Adventures and Cautionary Tales of a Former Playboy Bunny by Holly Madison. So we're on chapter 10, and hopefully, so the first show that we did 1 through 5, and then we did 6 through 9 on the second show, I believe. And so now we're gonna hopefully get through the entire remaining of the book. So just to recap, it's it's one of those. This is how I explain. It's one of those things when you're public, and that you're out there publicly, and what happens to you impacts other people, and you know, being kidnapped, tapped by being our kidnapping tapped into a Holly Madison that whose name is actually Holly Cullen, but she went into a Holly Madison professionally and made contact with Hugh Hefner, who was responsible for the Playboy contribution. So that contribution and participants such as Holly Madison played a part. Everyone has a part when it comes to showing. When it comes to showing, the offender or showing the type of offense. And so this was just one contribution to that situation. I guess that's a brief introduction. And we're going to begin with Down the Rabbit Hole. The show's ratings were high and growing, so it dawned on Playboy to begin merchandising it and the girlfriends to increase profits and capitalize on its popularity before it was too late. Charm bracelets are really popular. So how about one with cute charms like a tiny dog, a champagne bottle, a jet? I began doodling the design on one of the HMH for Hugh Marston Hefner, monogrammed notepads placed around the dining room table. Our show was packaged in such a way that, believe it or not, many adults were watching it with their kids. And I'm just going to stop right there because she said, believe it or not, the people watching it with their kids, believe it or not, something like, Playboy or the girls next door, it may be put out there for a, community such as what this show, the community of this show. So there's really no believe it or not because, that's just how it is sometimes. However, Playboy licensee was extremely cautious not to directly associate any one product with the girls next door in order to avoid owing any sales percentages to the network, save for the G&D book, calendar, and the bobblehead dolls, all of which were things I pushed to make happen. The Playboy Club inside the Palms Casino Resort opened in October 2006, and shortly after, Playboy licensee had the brilliant idea, no sarcasm, it actually was pretty good, to create Girls Next Door slot machines. We were made aware of the project and expected to be thrilled at the honor alone. No one mentioned any sort of compensation for use of our likeness or any percentage on the back end. Hef had worked closely with this company in the past and had made friends with the owner, so I suppose he didn't feel too threatened by us branching out in this way. Hef kept us aggressively sheltered, and any press we were allowed to do was pre approved by Playboy Public Relations and only done if it promoted the brand, the show, or Hef specifically. For the most part, we chose our battles and did as Hef requested when it came to our careers, but the slot machine idea struck a chord. There she was, a sultry Sarah Underwood, lying across the cover in a sleek, sophisticated black monokini with the tiny gold Playboy logo beneath the belly button. I whispered under my breath, "That was my design." It definitely made me question my loyalty to the brand, though. As G&D went into its fourth season, I finally had the opportunity to take Bridget and Kendra to my hometown. I love taking the girls to Craig, the tiny town I grew up in, and to Ketchikan, the nearest city, where my family and I used to go when we needed to buy something that Craig couldn't offer. There are only a handful of stores in Craig. The episode turned out to be my favorite of the entire series. I think that's quite interesting that she's from Craig because Craig is a city located in the state that where the kidnapping took place, allegedly. No, where the kidnapping took place. There is a brunette named Melanie from San Diego, raven haired Valerie Mason from Louisiana, platinum blonde Kayla Collins from Pennsylvania, and a quirky 18-year-old from Las Vegas named Angel Perino. I was surprised when my sister said yes to the idea of the girls next door covering her wedding. But since she had planned a very small destination wedding in Jamaica, it turned out that she thought it'd be a great way to share the celebration with all of her friends that couldn't be there. Bridget, Kendra, and I couldn't have had a better time. Just before filming was set to begin on season 5, there was a mad rush to get Bridget, Kendra, and me under contract. Letting us negotiate directly with the network was never going to be an option, probably because it meant he would have to relinquish too much control over his girlfriends. After all, what if E offered us something greater than being one of Hugh Hefner's blonde bimbos? So, of course, I guess by now she gets that it was, that whatever was going on wasn't about that. What I do recall is getting really worked up and marching down to the master bedroom to tell Hef I had no intention of signing. I think it's in bad taste to sign a contract to be your girlfriend, I maintained. Quietly, I did my best to consider my options. I didn't want to be coerced into doing anything else for this man. I imagine she was given the trademark mansion attitude if you don't like it, you can leave. Begrudgingly, she signed the contract. Because the show is about Hef's girlfriends, I feel like I'm signing a contract to be in a relationship, I whined. If I wanted to move forward with the show for a fifth season, I had to buy myself to Hef's production company. I felt silent for a few moments before asking, do they have to be signed today? They need them back today. But a nagging voice in the back of my head kept warning me not to trust this situation. I scribbled my name on the contract that Mary nonchalantly shoved under my nose and handed it back to her. I can't say this with certainty since I never witnessed pen to paper, but the gossip around the mansion was that someone on Hef's staff must have had to forge Kendra's contract in order to meet the network's deadline. From an outsider's perspective, however, everything looked like it couldn't be going any better. The series had become such a phenomenon. There was even a movie being made about it. You should have been the sporty one, Kendra teasingly pouted at Anna the first time we met her as she prepared to shoot a scene in the mansion's backyard. Anna was done up with curly blonde hair, frilly pink outfit, and her character had a grumpy pet cat, similar to Bridgette's cat, Gizmo. The movie would hit the number two spot at the box office on its opening weekend. No one was talking about adding a new girlfriend or anything, but I was actually recruiting girls that I thought would be good for the show to stay at the bunny house for a month or so while we filmed. I chose Laura Prop, a wild and crazy playmate from Florida, Kayla Collins, the bouncy blonde from the Go West Young Girl episode, and Angel Carino, also from the Go West episode, the funny girl with the high pitched voice from Las Vegas. One evening, Hef popped around the corner to my vanity area and announced that he was kicking Kayla out of the bunny house. She thinks Kayla is starting trouble between her and some of the other playmates. Other playmates, Hef reiterated as if that made him any more clear than before. Hef agreed to let her stay, but threatened to have her leave if she made another misstep. For the second half of season 5, the girls in the bunny house left and the three amigos gravitated back together. We invited all of our moms and our house mother, Mary O'Connor, out for a group spa day, visited Barbie Benson's outrageous home in Aspen, and went on a road trip for Bridgette's sister Anastasia's birthday. Half truly loved to believe that the highlight of any of his exes' lives was the time they spent with him. He also loved to remind viewers of all the beautiful women he dated. It felt like Fans loved watching our shoots on the series, which is most likely why we ended up getting 4 covers. And since 3 separate shoots would mean more footage for the show, production kindly comped the budget, $10,000 per shoot. I loved being a part of these little firsts. Since I wanted my third of the pictorial to be done my way, I decided to cover the cost of the photo shoot out of my own pocket and provide a different scenario for GND to film. In order to provide content for the TV show, I decided to do something a little experimental and out of the box for a Playboy shoot. Back then, there wasn't much room to move when it came to Playboy photo shoots. Inspired by that day, Barry and I did shoot in the mansion pool, setting up several surreal underwater scenes, a tea party, a chained escape artist, a mermaid, etc. Half, never missing a chance to paint me as ugly, would later publicly announce that my underwater photos were never published because they weren't flattering, when in fact they were never meant for the magazine in the first place. While the television show had boasted Hal's mood for quite some time, he was eventually brought back down to earth by the sad financial state of Playboy Enterprises. I remember seeing a TV news magazine story on the subject even before I moved into the mansion, but what I didn't know was that things had gone from bad to worse. Because I was the main girlfriend and meekest one in the bunch, Hef always felt safest picking on me. Sure, he lashed out at the other girls from time to time, but he was more cautious about it with them. In years past, when Hef and I had problems, I always blamed the other girlfriends for the drama. Without any mean girls scapegoats left, I would slowly begin to realize that Hef being mean was just Hef being mean. Bridget, Kendra, and I would gather around the dining room table with Hef and whatever girls were visiting the mansion that week and play games. I loved it the first 3 times we played, but the game was so mind-numbingly easy I quickly became bored. After 7 years living under half strict rules, I thought I could have earned enough respect to be allowed to bend the rules every now and then. A charming Southern girl, Tiffany was one of the most beautiful women ever to grace the pages of Playboy, and truly a joy to be around. I'd never been to Cabo before, I exclaimed to Bridget, glowing with anticipation. I felt like Cinderella finally getting to go to the ball. It's like I told you, we can't get a flight back late enough to be able to attend the ceremony and reception. I prayed he would see this logic, but Huff let out a stifled, sarcastic chuckle as if to mock me. You're not going to any parties, he said firmly, shuffling his feet across the hardwood back into the bedroom. Without uttering a word to Bridget, who I was certain overheard the whole ordeal, I gently put down the receiver as tears welled up in my eyes. I'm not happy here anymore, I told Bridget as we commiserated over not being allowed to attend our friend's wedding. Truth be told, I had never been happy at the mansion, but I had always been able to put on a facade leading others to believe that I was. I had convinced myself that the multiple girlfriends were the problem because I just couldn't admit to myself that I had made a terrible choice moving into the mansion in the first place. There is also the part of me that was grateful for the things health had afforded me: food and shelter when I needed it, the allowance put towards paying off the debts I had from college, and the opportunities to be on a television show. I then confessed something to Bridget that had up to that point been top secret, known only to me, Health, Mary, and a few doctors. I had made it clear to him several times that I wasn't going to be happy settling down at the mansion without a family. And this was his way of trying to save the relationship, though I'm sure he was quite relieved to dodge having another child. I couldn't even admit wanting to lead to Bridget. I just told her how heartbroken I was over the outcome of the test and that I didn't know what to do with my life. As becoming Health's one and only came closer and closer to becoming a reality, the truth was clear to me. I had always wanted to find a soulmate who was creative, ambitious, adventurous, and yes, Health might have been the epitome of all three of those things at some point in his life, but that point was long gone, probably before I was even born. In the spring of 2008, Playboy searched for the 55th anniversary Playmate to be featured in the January 2009 issue. In addition to Dasha, I chose four girls Half would consider for the coveted spot: Hope Dorzick, a brunette standout from the Dallas casting call; Jessica Burciaga, a petite Jennifer Lopez lookalike whom I found on MySpace; Crystal McCahill, a curvy Chicago girl whose mother had been a playmate in the 60s, a connection Half loved; and Carissa and Christina Shannon, blonde twins that I thought would make perfect TV drama. The candidates were brought to Los Angeles that summer for their test shoots and invited to stay at the Bunny House. The shoots were going along right on schedule until I received word from Dasha that Jessica had left the Bunny House the night before her scheduled Cinefood shoot at the studio. It turned out that the runaway bunny went hopping back to Orange County. According to some of the crew and other girls staying at the house, Jessica had been tormented for days by the twins, along with Playboy's resident wild child, Laura Paul. After sorting out that potential disaster, I gave myself a well deserved pat on the back. She was having trouble with the other girls, so she left, I calmly explained to him, hoping he would recognize the volume of my voice and aim to match it. But it's such a minor thing. I didn't even think you would want to be bothered with it, I said truthfully. I was completely caught off guard and could feel the tears start to burn my eyes. I took a deep breath and held them back with every ounce of dignity I had left. I couldn't bear to make eye contact with anyone. I felt so humiliated. After what felt like 30 long seconds of him glaring at me with his jaw clenched so hard I thought he might crack his teeth, he stomped his foot like a child and scuffled back into the bedroom. I eventually decided on one of Hef's friends, since he knew Hef well and certainly understood the degree to which I was bound for the show. Bridget had come in early and placed a box of sprinkles cupcakes on the table. I had cut myself a piece of one and passed it to him. He then went on to remind me that Bridget and Kendra were leaving soon and that Girls Next Door would then be all about Hef, me, my work, and the girls that came to the studio. It seemed like all my dreams were coming true, but I had to ask myself, were those still my dreams? I was finally seeing Hef's true colors and accepting that perhaps he had been that way all along. They'd always been so supportive for me because they saw that I treated Hef well. As all these questions were playing over and over in my head like a broken record, the time finally came to shoot the goodbye scene between me, Kendra, and Bridget. As I was the only part of the trio who was supposed to be staying at the mansion, I just plopped myself on Bridget's bed and waited for the others to talk. I don't want to be here without Bridget and Kendra. After more than 4 years together at the mansion, all of the blonde army was disbanding. Like the freckle faced producer had suggested years before, Kendra really did grow up inside the mansion, but it seemed to be due largely in part to a man she had met outside the mansion. Gone was the insecure little girl who labeled Bridget and me the enemies and spent her days desperately jockeying for attention. When I first met her, all she had wanted was to be a playmate, and she ended up achieving so much more. I didn't know what it was, but something had to feel more genuine and fulfilling than simply being the First Lady Stepford wife of the Playboy Mansion. After a full day on set, I was exhausted, but still exhilarated at the idea of spending some time by myself in Las Vegas without the watchful mansion eye hovering over me. I desperately needed to get out that night and experience life as a normal 20 something before deciding if I was going to go back to health and settle down or break it off good. I was like a bachelorette looking for her last hurrah or an Amish kid going out for a rum springer. The only problem was I didn't have anyone to hang out with. Jessica in the photo, if I was going to go back to health and settle down or break it off for good, I was like a bachelorette looking for her last hurrah or an Amish kid going out for rum springer. Jessica and the photo staff were wiped out from the day's shoot and all went to bed early. Because I was one of Hugh Hefner's girlfriends, guys didn't usually have the gall to hit on me that blatantly. So I found his fumbled attempts strangely endearing, like a teenage boy tripping over his own feet. Despite his mysterious on camera persona, behind the scenes he was an easygoing jokester. I was charmed by the things that littered his suite: video games, a foosball table, and an intricate model train set. I wasn't so charmed by the cheap plastic dry erase board set to the back of his front door with the words Brittany was here, Spears, sprawled across the center in a drunken, out of order sprawl. It was all sort of obnoxious. But truth? We shot our final scene at LAX nightclub inside the Luxor. Bridget and I were escorted to a large booth already populated with pretty girls. Producers set me next to a petite, sexy brunette with sparkly, high gloss lips. Since we already had secured the bachelorette suite at the Palms, a 2,300 square foot pink paradise, since rebranded as the Hot Pink Suite, for part of Jessica's shoot, I decided I should crash there for the night. Chris and I were just friends, but the last thing I needed was a picture popping up online of the two of us having a romantic dinner together, or however the press might spin it. Again, his thinly veiled attempts at baiting me couldn't have been more transparent, but I was slowly becoming more and more charmed by him. Unlike the ultra feminine, docile fembot I was required to be as one of Cap's girlfriends, with Chris, I felt like I could be one of the guys. I had one night away from the mansion. I didn't want to squander it sitting up in the hotel room, but we had to be careful. I bounded into the bedroom to snatch my bag and check my makeup. Looking at myself in the reflection, I couldn't help but notice the big smile involuntarily plastered on my face. Situated inside the Luxor, the boutique nightclub did feel surprisingly private, and I allowed myself to relax. Chris asked if I would take a picture with the Cat House girls when a posse of uniformed women arrived at our table. Cat House was a restaurant as well as a nightclub, so I didn't think the photo could be that incriminating should it get out. You know, Chris began going into a bubbling speech about how he was looking for someone to have fun with, but to have a serious relationship with. He was quick to add after he noticed the look on my face. I took his nervousness as a compliment. He seemed to be smitten with me. To be honest, I found it a little tacky. Here was this adventurous guy, so full of life, who was looking for someone to be young and wild with. He blurted out that he'd marry me right now when I didn't take the bait. To be fair, I knew that Chris was used to women shamelessly throwing themselves at him, so I figured he didn't quite appreciate that I was simply interested in the novelty of hanging out with a guy who was close to my own age for a night. After a few glasses of wine, Chris gave me a tour of the Luxor Theater and then accompanied me back to the Palms and walked me back to my suite. As he stood over the bed and leaned in to kiss me, I erupted into a fit of laughter and turned my head away from him. He reached down and removed my earrings from each ear and set them by the bedside table. After walking across the room, he scrawled something on the back page of a room service menu, a note reading, I miss you, tearing out the sheet and sticking it next to my curling iron on the bathroom counter. Honestly, I have endured so many verbal lashings lately that I had no idea what could have possibly been the catalyst for this outburst. After getting permission to stay over the night before, I had called him again shortly before his 10 p.m. bedtime to wish him good night. But I called you right before you went to bed. Hell, he had slept with an army of different women during our time together, but I remained faithful. When his then fiancee confessed to being unfaithful, he was devastated, but chose to marry her anyway. His second wife was rumored to have been unfaithful with a member of the mansion's staff, and his third wife ran out of their first planned wedding to be with just one of the several men she had allegedly cheated on half with. It seemed he felt that if he could somehow stall and put off my leaving as long as possible, that I would just forget about wanting to leave and everything would go back to normal, save for the giant imaginary albatross he had to hang over my head. Are you sure? He finally asked, continuing to dangle the bait that E had ordered a sixth season of the show. I want to be able to actually hang out with my girlfriends and have fun like a normal person. After years of being conditioned to believe that I wasn't anything without Playboy attached to my name, I had actually started to believe it. It was ridiculous considering that our disagreements up to this point had always been about things that should have been trivial to him. He didn't care if I stayed out of fear or out of pity, as long as I stayed. But I wasn't one to budge. It was oddly nostalgic to be moving back into the same room I moved into as a mansion newbie 7 years prior. Back then, I barely had a suitcase full of possessions. Now, I had substantially more to pack. I had a large storage closet full of clothing, mementos, and Christmas decorations in the mansion's basement, not to mention another one in the bunny house across the street. One evening after work, I was making trips from house bedroom to my old room down the hall. But that wasn't going to stop me. If I ever seemed to be in too good of spirits, he would do his best to smack me back down with snide comments or attempts at making me jealous by toting around the Shannon twins. I was beginning to realize that he preferred miserable and uninspired Holly, maybe because she was easier to control. For the time being, I was allowed to keep my job at Studio West. Still, while Hef had begun the process of moving on, he hadn't lost hope that I would reconsider and move back into his master suite. I have the rest of my stuff out of your room by tomorrow, I told him during once such encounter. When I went to grab my things from a shelf near the bed, I noticed one of Hef's file folders sitting neatly in the middle of what was formerly my side of the bed. After death tax, his fortunes will be divvied up, starting with roughly 50% to his charitable foundation, and the bulk of the remainder his four children, Christy, David, Marston, and Cooper. For the better part of a decade, Hef used money as a means to control each girlfriend. The will stated that $3 million would be bestowed to Holly Madison at the time of his death, provided I still lived at the mansion. In the past, he had casually mentioned leaving me the bunny house, but I never took the bait. Disgusted by the gold digger image the public had of me, I tried to stay away from those kind of cliches as much as possible in my real life. Eventually, I would go on to find my own success, but I didn't know it back then. I put the folder back on the bed just as I had found it and never breathed a word of it. I was only glad he didn't know that I had already started the process of removing my bunny tattoo as well. Oh, she removed her bunny tattoo. I know he was trying to sound romantic, as if he were pledging his undying love, but to me, his comment sounded like a slight. I knew I deserved better, and there's no way his kind of love was the best the world had to offer. Through his vain attempts to intimidate, guilt, persuade, and eventually bribe me, the only thing he succeeded in doing was to convince me that I was making the best decision I had made in a very long time. It was a town brimming with opportunities. I hope to split my time between LA and Las Vegas in order to balance both my job at Studio West as well as performing regularly at the MGM. After we discussed the upcoming Halloween party, I had to fill her in on how awkward things continued to be for me under Hef's roof. A few weeks after that fateful night in Las Vegas, photos emerged revealing what appeared to be an intimate evening I spent with Chris Angel in Las Vegas. During those 8 weeks, as I waited around to see what sort of final scenes I needed to film for season 5, more details began to not so mysteriously emerge in the press about my relationship with Chris for being an illusionist. He sure was obvious. Though Bridget hadn't gotten involved with anyone yet, the media jumped on any sighting of her with another guy, hoping to round out the story of Kendra and Hank and me and Chris. One tabloid article in particular erroneously linked Bridget to a Las Vegas DJ. Since that same article went out of his way to mention that I was whisked away in Chris's black Rolls Royce Phantom, I couldn't help but think he was behind that article too. Yeah, he talked to me about it too, Bridget said. Like a zombie, I walked back to our bed and tucked myself in for the night. By then, I had weaned myself off the antidepressants I had been prescribed back when G&D first started filming. Between the success of the series and my new career, I had established some much needed self-confidence and even found some happiness in my day-to-day routine. It forced me to realize that it wasn't just in my head. It had to be this lifestyle that was draining me. It was a delicate balance to strike, especially since it was a total farce. When Kendra walks into Hal's bedroom to reveal to him that she's decided to leave the mansion, viewers can clearly see framed photos of Carissa and Christina Shannon, who moved in as girlfriends in October 2008, scattered around the bed, having already replaced the photos of the three of us. In fact, it worked out for them quite nicely because in order to make Hef look like the playboy he wanted to be portrayed as, it was important that him dating the Shannon twins be worked into G&D's fifth season before Bridget, Kendra, and I left. It worked nicely for them because when Hef came to see us scuba dive in the ocean, he brought a gaggle of playmates with him, including the Shannon twins, who were shooting their playmate pictorial. But the twins were never predatory, never trying to steal anyone's boyfriend. They didn't move in until after the three of us had all broken it off with Hef, despite what he would like viewers to think. When it was finally my turn to film a goodbye scene, producers asked me to film a short segment with Hef where I was to tell him I'd be heading to Las Vegas to work on a pictorial. It was intended to be my last scene. By asking me to refer to the photo shoot in Vegas, I suppose they intended that to be where I met Chris. If I changed my mind and came back before the next season began filming as they hoped I would, the scene could be played off as a temporary departure. In a moment of rebelliousness, I decided to wear Chris Angel logo hoodie, a blatant flaw in the continuity of the series. The show was setting it up as if I were on my way to meet Chris for the first time, but in reality, that wasn't the case. The mansion's annual Halloween bash, the Saturday before the actual holiday, was my final hurrah before heading off to the Santa Monica condo I recently purchased, and eventually to Las Vegas and Chris. As a nod to my new Vegas obsession, I decided to go as Elvis and immediately buddied up with John Stamos, who was also dressed as Elvis, and his then girlfriend as Priscilla, naturally. And together we all braved the mansion's elaborate haunted house. Like Dorothy, I peeked behind the curtain and saw the frail old man pretend to be someone he wasn't. Just a few months earlier, the ailing financial state of Playboy Enterprises prompted them to begin selling tickets to the once exclusive soirees. The guest list ballooned to accommodate the increasing demand, and the vibe became crowded and hectic. By 2008, everyone had a smartphone, and the no camera rule that used to be what kept the parties at a private and exclusive haven for celebrities was obliterated. Since by that time I have found a bit of TV fame, speaking of smartphones, how I leave out the house and forget. Anyway, back to this. Since by that time I have found a bit of TV fame, I spent much of the night taking photos with guests. And it was there that they spotted her, standing just a few feet away from the table, boiling over with nerves at the thought of meeting Gatsby himself. They had no idea that night that she would be their eventual undoing. Living inside those honking walks hadn't been the path to fame and fortune that I had imagined, and it certainly had been my path to love. I was grateful for all I had gained there, but still mourned all that was lost. I don't want to be anyone's prisoner. I want to be a queen. Lewis Carroll, Through the Looking Glass. Seduced by this good looking man who was seemingly frantic in his affections for me, I allowed myself to be lured in. It wouldn't take long before the illusion started to dissolve. The two of us didn't really have that much in common, But I was so thrilled to be able to go out and try new things that I didn't notice or care. We were quickly becoming the most buzzed about couple in Las Vegas. I have to admit, it was nice to be recognized as someone independent of health. Sure, people still thought of me as a Playboy bunny, but I had separated from health and was still not only relevant, but thriving. Thanks, he told me that I wouldn't be without him. And just to comment, the whole not being anything without health, not being anything without Playboy, because that piece was so specific and health had a piece. That's why it seemed like you were a part, like Holly Madison was a part of this because it was, a part of it. Not saying that it couldn't do anything else, but once it went to Girls Next Door, then that became like another sub product still related to Playboy. So it's kind of like you got this link to this case that couldn't be broken. You know, not that you'll never leave me and this is all that you're gonna ever be about, but when it's part of your ID, it's like it's part of your ID, it's part of who you are, and that professional ID. Then it's I know it's a thin line when it comes to perception or but that's and it's still like that. It's like it's still related to that. It's still related, Girls Next Door is still related to the whole situation. Not that there's not other things that can be other ways to affect the result of justice, with this professional contribution, but it's still a link that can't be severed. The two of us didn't really have that much in common, but I was so thrilled to be able to go out and try new things that I didn't notice or care. We were quickly becoming the most buzzed about couple in Las Vegas. I have to admit, it was nice to be recognized as someone independent of health. Sure, people still thought of me as a Playboy bunny, but I had separated from health and was still not only relevant, but thriving. Things he told me that I wouldn't be without him. On the days I would travel back to Los Angeles to work my Playboy job that I had somehow managed to hang on to, I'd come home to a huge bouquet of red roses already waiting for me at my Santa Monica condo. After a few trips back to the coast, Chris began insisting that one of his security guards accompany me. In my post mansion life, Chris seemed to be exactly what I needed. It wasn't long before I reverted back into the Converse wearing jeans, ponytail, and black nail polish kind of girl that I used to be in high school. Despite having made a complete break from my relationship with him, I still felt like I was awkwardly darting back and forth between two worlds. Not only was there my job at the Playboy studio, but there are still girls next door obligations to fill. Understandably, now that the season was wrapped and edited, the producers were eager to get this commentary in the can before the three of us girls scattered even farther in different directions. Perhaps still locked behind that giant gate, depressed as ever, or worse. With our breakup, not to mention the way he had treated me, still so fresh in my mind, I couldn't begin to manufacture any sort of sentiment for the commentary. While I had long ago tired of Pep's double standards, ridiculous rules, and belittling comments, this was the first time I really realized what a manipulator he was. The biggest reason I never got along with most of the girls in the house was Hef. Since I openly black, and that's probably because since what Holly Madison had with it, it was kind of huge. It was like the case. Everybody else was kind of like supporting shows of it. So if there's a situation where one wanted to be like, the star when there is like a serious situation that was in a Holly Madison, that probably posed as a problem, you know. And with Health being the guy of it, the guy meaning like the business person, the one that like I don't want to say enforcer, but the enforcer when it comes to this case. And any attempts to distract from what that big picture was, I could get how that could be a problem, when they're trying to distract Health. Since I openly blabbed to the press about my hopes to do a reality show of my own in Vegas, they called to find out what I had in mind. It was difficult for me to communicate with them though, because Chris seemed to be getting more and more paranoid about any affiliation I had with Playboy or Girls Next Door and tried to talk me out of even attending Kendra's wedding. While his behavior troubled me, I could almost sympathize with it in my own twisted way. After getting some space between me and the mansion, I was truly beginning to realize just how poorly I had been treated and what a grim situation that I had been. And so, in a way, I saw Chris's behavior as him protecting me from Playboy. Usually, I watch his shows from the audience or waited backstage with other members of his entourage, but that evening, everyone else must have been occupied because I was the only one in the room. Somewhere in the midst of our catching up, what was meant to be a friendly phone call turned into a berating session. Apparently, it had been okay for Kendra to write on about Hank throughout the commentary, despite having dated him behind Hef's back for the better part of a year. I guess because they had been planning a Kendra spinoff anyway, that was okay. True, they thought the spinoff was going to be about a wild single Kendra out on her own, but the concept of the show was easily adaptable to the idea of Kendra having a boyfriend once they found out about the secret months-long romance. It's like one of those things because I vaguely remember Girls Next Door vaguely, but I do remember when Kendra had her show. It's like one of those things you don't know why you're in one. Like another thing was like the show with Tequila. I forgot her name. Tila Tequila, Tweela Tequila, Tyler Tequila Tweela. It was kind of like that with Kendra. Like this show is on, and you're like in this like it's like on where you are. You're like in the community where it's on at, where you're tuned into it. Where you're in its alert, but you don't know. At that time, it was the truth. I have no idea why. I had no idea about Holly Madison or what that meant to me or anything. But it's weird how things can be like that sometimes. Like you don't know what actually connects you to this show. You don't know that it was rape, or you don't know that, it was a murder, or you don't know that it was like a kidnapping. And that it had to be at a certain level of rape, it had to be a certain level of kidnapping, it had to be a certain level of murder for it to be a show and you be connected to it. So it's just weird when it all comes together and you have to put all the pieces together and, get justice. For some reason, though, I seem to be the first ex girlfriend that he was going out of his way to poison. I've been told about all the things you've been saying about me, and that's not right. I did my best to be the best possible girlfriend for 7 years, and for so long I tried to be, had been, in fact, a model girlfriend. And here was Hef, characterizing me as if I were no better than all the two faced manipulators he dated before me. I had changed, and in my opinion, it was for the better. I need to leave Playboy totally behind me. The title of our reality show was inspired by the way Hef described the idea Playmate back in the 50s when he launched the magazine. I was never contacted to be a part of the photo spreads and interviews, though, and it hurt to be the only one left out. I didn't want to go back to the mansion. Chris knew that, but it was as if he couldn't help his jealousy. In the beginning, any fame I had, Chris loved. But as time went on, his jealousy seemed to get the best of him. After an amazing Elton John concert at Caesar's Palace, we went backstage to say hello to the friendly pop legend. We were supposed to be on the same team, but it was starting to feel more like we were in a one-sided who was more famous pissing contest. It didn't feel right locking it away, and honestly, Chris's apparent fascination with hoarding my valuables was beginning to make me uncomfortable. Still, despite any trepidation that may have crept into my mind, I still wanted to believe we had a shot at making it together. Chris had already scheduled our joint birthday celebration to be held at his favorite night spot, Lax, but I also wanted to keep a tradition that I developed over the last several years, a trip to Disneyland with a group of friends. Near my birthday, Chris and I planned a day trip to the Magic Kingdom and invited my usual guest list, which included a few girls from the mansion. You won't believe it, said one of the girls who lived at the bunny house. Have heard you were going to Disneyland for your birthday and decided to take his new girlfriends the same day you're going. What are the chances that he all of a sudden decided to go to Disneyland on the very same day I would be there celebrating my birthday? He wouldn't deter my birthday celebration. I never mind having my photo taken, but I hated his sneaking around. This was the first time I felt embarrassed to be with him, and it wouldn't be the last. The bubbly reporter who interviewed us was very interested in the diamond ring that sparkled on my finger. It wasn't an engagement ring, but the large diamond birthday gift Chris bought me piqued the press's interest nonetheless. For Chris's birthday, I wanted to get him something special. But what do you get the man who has everything, or at least could afford to buy himself anything he could ever want? So much for its being the thought that counts. On the back, next to the clasp, was a little charm that read in tiny diamonds, XOCA. Chris had been married before to his hometown sweetheart, but they filed for divorce after she learned that he had been spotted with an A-list movie actress. Wow, I exclaimed, truly breathless at these elaborate gifts. Even though Hef had dropped a few pieces of jewelry on me, they were always pieces of mass produced, Playboy branded merchandise, made even less personal by the fact that identical pieces were given to his other girlfriends at the same time. The slogan could be Holly Madison, bring out the bunny in you. After the entertainer, Chris could charm the pants off anyone, in some cases, literally. But I was disappointed to learn that just an inch below the surface, he didn't appear to be the sharpest tool in the shed. My parents confided in me that they found him a bit controlling, but they were seeing things I wasn't necessarily ready to accept. Plus, seeing me with a man closer to my own age had to be a lot easier to swallow. The warm Mexican sun beat down on my shoulders as Chris and I sat at our beachside table eating sushi and drinking Coke Lights with our friends Barbara and Ron. We're gonna miss you guys, I bemoaned to Barbara beneath the perfect cloudless Cabo sky after a boating excursion. I said, pocketing the business card with Barbara's information. After we finished our leisurely lunch and said our goodbyes, Chris and I went back to our suite. In addition to his unreasonable temper tantrums, hoarding my most valuable possessions, and encouraging me to quit my job, he was showing yet another troubling sign, isolating me from my friends. I never spotted the photographers. Judging by the photos, they appeared to be shooting up from boats off the coast or from neighboring hotel balconies. His anger seemed irrational to me and was somewhat terrifying. By this time, it had become clear to me that I had traded one controlling megalomaniac for another. Only this time, instead of being trapped behind the mansion walls, I was Rapunzel locked high away in the penthouse of the Luxor Hotel. He no longer had the energy for any of the off day excursions we used to do. And during his on days, I had no choice but to adopt his routine. Chris wanted me to be with him 24/7, and he balked when I asked to go on simple errands by myself. We slept for most of the day, ate Mexican food in bed, and headed straight backstage 2 hours before the curtains went up so Chris could begin his pre-show ritual, get an hour-long massage, eat a sandwich, and sit for hair and makeup. I felt my body weaken and the light started to darken as my eyes rolled towards the back of my head. I don't know, I uttered breathlessly. I didn't plan on going to Bridgette's party, I finally said. Apparently, that was the right answer because his spirits immediately brightened. I was so relieved to have avoided another major blowout that I didn't even worry about what caused me to feel faint in the first place. I didn't come here to be on the show. I didn't realize it at the time, but apparently I was the sideshow attraction that was to be trotted out to distract viewers from the disastrous show reviews that Larry would certainly be bringing up. To him, it seemed as if I was jumping from one rich boyfriend to the next with no purpose or pursuits of my own beyond being professional arm candy. It hadn't been my intention, but the relationship with Chris proved so controlling and consuming that I hadn't been able to make any professional moves of my own. Once again, of my own. I found him to be unintelligent and he seemed virtually illiterate. In the beginning, I would watch the show from a seat in the audience, and Chris would manage to work my name into the narrative and introduce me at the end along with his family. Eventually, he would suggest that I wait backstage with his bodyguard, which meant I would be there to greet Chris during his quick between scene changes. Who are you texting? The bodyguard sneered at me, throwing me a suspicious look. So, who is Chris Angel? Let's see. Chris Angel. Like, why was this ID with Chris Angel? So, oh, I couldn't think of who or who was going on stage. So evidently, Chris Angel is a magician, an illusionist, and a musician. And he's not. His name is not actually an angel. That is his stage name. I had gone to bed, finally ready to leave Chris. He stormed out of the master bathroom, tearing up a Valentine's Day card I had given him, featuring my pinup portrait by Olivia on the front. Chris finally said that he thought I should go back to my parents and that he would buy me a plane ticket. He stormed out of the room and yelled loudly to one of his assistants to book me on a flight to Portland that afternoon. She listened and offered me the best advice she could, but the real problem wasn't obvious to either of us at that point. Yes, I had just embarked on a high profile romance that went wrong quickly and dramatically, but that wasn't really where my emotional crash was coming from. I had no idea what was going to happen next, but I was determined to brave that storm, despite the heavy burden of sadness I carried onto the plane with me. Chris's voice echoed in my mind, telling me I needed to go back to California. I felt like Health was trying to sabotage me in Los Angeles by bad-mouthing me and leaving me out of Girls Next Door related press. And now Chris was trying to banish me from Las Vegas. Sorry, boys, it's not going to be that easy, I thought, pulling my hoodie over my head. 4. You see, so many out of the way things had happened lately that Alice had begun to think that very few things indeed were really impossible. Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Of course, I had my own apartment in Santa Monica, but I had become terrified of being by myself. I have no idea why he was there, but I found it creepy. What I needed most was a comfortable, safe atmosphere surrounded by people I loved and who wanted the best for me. Despite Hef and the producers' incessant lobbying for my return to the mansion in the series, even though Crystal and the twins were already occupying our former spots, Mary encouraged me to make the best decision for me and to follow my heart. It's better for you to be on your own, she told me. A few days after I arrived, I contacted Chris's assistant about shipping out everything I left behind in my hasty departure. I knew I didn't want to be with Chris, but I was still broken. It's humbling. It's a humbling experience having a stack of cardboard boxes packed neatly with your belongings shipped back to you without even a single word. I felt like I had been thrown out with the trash. I honestly didn't care what people thought. I was just happy to be a safe distance away from him. Since we still shared the same publicist, we both got an email from him asking what kind of joint statement we would like to make about the breakup. I don't know if anyone brought the excuse, but I didn't really care. The list went on, but those were my main goals. Although I wasn't a dancer, I was dying to be on the show. It looked like the contestants were having the time of their lives. So I called Dancing with the Stars. Chris's manager began, since you told me you were interested in it, but they've already cast their upcoming season. After making my list, I decided that tomorrow will be the beginning of a fresh start. It was such an uncanny coincidence that I had to believe that someone above was answering my prayers. It was meant to be. My addition to the DWTS cast was supposed to be kept quiet until they announced it live on the premiere episode. 8 hours of practice later, my feet had erupted in terrible blisters, but I didn't care. Not even the pain in my feet could dampen my spirits as I skipped my way back to the studio, eager to continue our routine. After the second day of rehearsals, I was swept away to the office of Emmy Award-winning costume designer Randall Christensen on the CBS lot to begin fittings for my first outfit. Little did they know that this was the break I had been praying for, an opportunity when I truly needed it most. As long as I remembered the routine, I was going to be okay. Over the course of my tenure on the show, my scores were mediocre, my dancing wasn't great, and the 8-hour rehearsals, 5 days a week, were brutal. But I was having the time of my life. With distance and a bit of time between us, it appeared we could be civil. Some of his messages were very flirty or risque, but I didn't bite. Plus, I knew Chris well enough to be certain that any sort of affirmation I was getting from him was most likely motivated by the new positive publicity I was receiving for being a part of the DWTS cast. Instead of wallowing in the past, I chose to to happily close that chapter of my life and be satisfied that we seem to be on good terms. So you say I'm Holly. I was one of Hugh Hefner's girlfriends at the Playboy Mansion, directed Freddie, a DWTS field producer from behind the camera. I meekly and politely suggested, praying he would take the bait. I didn't want to be difficult, but I had to finally stand up for my own dignity and self respect. I'm just tired of being branded that way. I refuse to let that be the most defining thing in my life. A few months earlier, after Kendra announced her engagement, Hef publicly stated that she'd be getting married at the mansion, and he'd be the one walking her down the aisle before Kendra even fully agreed to it. Wounded by the mass exodus of his beloved girlfriends, Hef was struggling to avoid looking like he was in absolute control of the situation. I realized that dancing could end any week for me, so I couldn't allow myself to become complacent. In the posters, a shadowy, mysterious looking Bo Peep in a sinister looking Red Riding Hood lurked on a black background, the Bo Peep wearing a stock, trashy lingerie corset. In the end, I lasted about a month on Dancing with the Stars and had simultaneously got myself into the best shape of my life. I knew that I'd be returning to DWTS in another short month to perform in the finale along with the other eliminated contestants, so I was determined to have secured my next gig before then. The theater itself was remodeled specifically for Peep Show, which told me that both the producers and the hotel intended for the show to stick around for a while. As the lights dimmed and the show began, larger than life LED screens glowed behind the stage, showcasing a magnificent black and white video of his current star, Kelly Monaco, a fellow DWTS alum, former playmate, in Soap Actress. Even though the best routines didn't even feature Bo Peep, it didn't matter. After drifting off to sleep one night, she finds herself in dreamland being led through a series of vignettes, each teaching her how to be confident and sexy. Auditions and interviews for the show were extensive and brought me back to Las Vegas regularly over the next few weeks. Contrary to popular belief, just because I have posed nude for a magazine doesn't mean I am the most confident exhibitionistic person in the world. So going back, each teaching her how to be confident and sexy. In fact, I was nervous that I wouldn't look good enough to be cast. 7 years of being reminded that I never looked quite good enough was a hard burden to shake. I know it seems counterintuitive that I was that nervous for the audition, since I was so eager to perform nightly for a large live audience, but there is something comforting about knowing that I'd be on a large stage, far removed from the crowd, with the appropriate distance between us, and, of course, lighting. Flattering lighting. I had a hard time believing that unique was really something anyone would want to see. Mary let me know that Bridget, Kendra, and I had been invited to attend. But at the same time, you have to understand that I've been out of the mansion for only about 6 months at that point. And while I was increasingly coming to terms with the hell health had put me through, there was still a part of me that wanted to be able to walk away on good terms with a clean slate, like all his other ex girlfriends. Would have finally arrived at the party, new girlfriends in tow. Bridget, Kendra, and I went to say hello and wish him a happy birthday. I greeted Carissa and Christina, who were warm and friendly, and then said hello to Hef, who looked more pale than usual, but otherwise seemed to be in a relatively good mood. Remembering how people used to treat me, I made a conscious effort to go out of my way to be kind. Immediately, my gut told me that something was up with this girl, but I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I felt bad that the new girlfriends were being shoved aside for the famous ex-girlfriends. Crystal couldn't even be bothered to look in our direction. I squealed into my cell phone, hardly able to believe what I was hearing. I was absolutely over the moon, determined to work hard, promote my butt off, and with luck, find a way to become a more permanent part of the production. We want you to come back, Christina blurted out, not 5 minutes after we sat down at Il Pastillo. I can't come back. I've already made a decision to move on, I said sympathetically, picking up a piece of bread out of the basket. I knew something must be askew for the twins to be asking my help. One of the twins chimed in that Hef was really sick and not doing well before the other one took over, saying that he had fallen down in his bathroom the other day and wet himself. Christina tried to explain things to me, saying that Crystal felt really threatened by me and that anytime she heard I had spoken to Mary, she freaked out because she thought I was going to come back. Carissa cut in and said that when Hef had heard I was going to be at his birthday party, he took extra time in front of the mirror getting ready and that this had made Crystal jealous. In fact, I'm really trying my best to give Hef space, and one of the blonde beauties cut me off, telling me that Crystal took the panel off my old desk with the bird and the initials. Pictures of Tina, Brandy, and Kimberly littered Hef's room for years after I moved in, and Crystal was already throwing fits about any sign of me just a few months into dating Hef. It's a little early in the relationship for her to be that picky, I said with a small smile. When it came to being dramatic, it appeared Hef had met his match. Chris had told me that mailing them wasn't the best idea. The bodyguard, whose expensive SUV had been idling as if he was on his way somewhere, jumped out of his car after spotting me. Without as much as a goodbye, he got back to his truck and took off. Did he seriously take back those gifts? It's not like I intended to wear jewelry given to me by an ex boyfriend, but I didn't think he actually take them back either. It was as if he was telling me I was never worth it to begin with. Once again, I felt like I had been thrown out with the trash. I decided to send him a text and give him the benefit of the doubt. It had been an uphill battle, but I was finally where I wanted to be as a single, successful career woman making something of my life. Besides the gorgeous suite and 24-hour butler service, my peep show contract covered all the room service and restaurant food I could eat, including the casino Starbucks and limitless salon and spa services. The best part was I never felt lonely. My body had taken such a beating during the exhaustive rehearsals, and I had bruises everywhere, not to mention scars, and what remained of my Playboy money tattooed. I imagined them bouncing all over the place during the highly aerobic performance, and it didn't necessarily strike me as sexy. I'm not sure they thought a reality TV star could add anything to their show, but they saw how hard I was working and that I took the production very seriously. I grew especially close to the lead singer, Josh Strickland, who became like a brother to me almost instantly. It was an amazing time to be a part of that show. She'd offer me a friendly wave from the rafters before taking her plunge down onto the stage each night. For so long, I dreamed of becoming a performer, and this was my chance to prove to everyone that I was capable of more than being a trophy girlfriend. But whether or not that face would sell tickets remained to be seen. After all, it had been his agenda to banish me from Vegas as if I had never existed. And whether I liked it or not, Chris was still a high profile person in my new hometown, which could prove to be very small at times. Why not make an attempt to bury the hatchet? I wish you and your girlfriend the best. I assumed I wouldn't hear back from him, but wanted to extend the olive branch so I at least knew I did what I could to end things on the best note possible. You are the biggest running joke around here. I wanted to tell her that soon she would be the biggest running joke. Chris routinely dumped his girlfriends whenever he had a famous fling, and many of them would come crawling back the moment it fizzled. I was never ashamed of needing help, but the fact that he would use that information against me really pissed me off. She had come backstage to wish me luck and immediately registered the tears welling up in my eyes. Thanks, I said, sniffing back the tears, so grateful that Angel had been there at that exact moment to say precisely what I needed to hear. Being the small town that the Vegas entertainment community is, I eventually heard about the aftermath of my response to that mean text. Despite the mean text message and the broken lip, my official debut in Peep Show couldn't have been more perfect. Flushed with excitement, I tried on the original custom tailored piece intended for her Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend number, a costume that was deemed too risque and was eventually replaced in the film by the iconic pink gown. The piece was so well built, the boning carved out my waist without feeling heavy or tight like a typical corset. A handful of rhinestones glittered across the bust, creating a sparkly nude look. I was in absolute awe. It was surreal to imagine that she had worn these very same pieces decades before me, and how, as a little girl, I shut my eyes and dreamed about what it would feel like to be her for just a moment. Those dark demons eventually got the best of Marilyn. I needed to let her know that I was going to completely sever ties with the magazine before the conversation went any further. They all stared at me with blank expressions, trying with great care to make sure their faces weren't betraying them. I eventually agreed to have them bring Hef and his new girlfriends to see me in my new review. Hef greeted them at the table where the signing was settled while Crystal hung back behind the velvet ropes. As the press camera started flashing, Crystal bolted around the barricade to participate in the hug fest. They kind of looked like them. Crystal sneered as she walked past the hotel's Playboy retail boutique and spied the Holly, Bridget, and Kendra bobbleheads in the window. When he offered to feed each girlfriend a bite of his ice cream sundae, he turned to offer me a spoonful, which I quickly refused, saying, "Oh, I ordered my own." I played into it as much as I needed to, but was eager to go on with the show. I knew what it felt like as Huff's girlfriend to be compared to his former flames and feel undervalued or underappreciated. But there was no reason for Crystal to take that out on me with all her snide comments. While we had moved on to different places in our lives, we still kept in touch, and deep down, there was an undeniable bond that we shared. Mayor O'Connor was gracious enough to host the bash in her backyard and Bridget did a wonderful job of putting the soiree together. Apparently, the twins and Crystal put up a major stink about having to be at the party and refused to participate in any of the games by hiding in the house. And because the episode was being filmed for Girls Next Door and not Kendra, Half had to have his new ladies included in the footage, so he had them fake a scene where it looked like Kendra was opening her last present when she hadn't even started opening presents just so they could leave. Occasionally, when I was on my computer, I have the TV on in the background. I was terribly disappointed in the producers. From the reports I read and the little I did see, season 6 felt like a stale rehash of old storylines mixed with some of the ideas we had tossed around, but had gotten around to using over the years, like camping in the backyard. It felt like they were trying to encourage a war between the old and new guard, or perhaps they felt that by throwing our names around as often as possible, they could distract viewers and keep them from realizing what a stormfest the once energetic and bubbly series had become. Maybe I should have just said that I hadn't seen any of it, but the constant jabs had begun gnawing at me. After all, I'm only human. I don't think he writes the letters with the purpose of getting a response or closure, which is why I never bothered to respond. I think he does it so he can have the last word and even the tiniest event in the story of his life. Peep Show had quickly become the Vegas Strip's new smash hit. After viewers saw what they were getting on the season premiere, most never turned back in. Most never tuned back in. My initial vision for the show was Legally Blonde meets a PG rated version of Showgirls Peep Show. Of Showgirls. My initial vision for the show was Legally Blonde meets a PG rated version of Showgirls. I wanted my day job to be interning at the mayor's office, learning how to run the city. I was quiet and reserved and much preferred reading a book to shaking my ass. In my head, I thought it was going to be my version of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Girl moves to a new city post breakup in order to make it on her own. With shooting to begin in early 2010, our first order of business was to lock down the cast. Anxious to begin this Playboy-free chapter of my life, I was eager to sort out contract negotiations as well as quickly as possible and began filming. It was a lot of baggage to move forward with, but I was in a hurry to get along. At the start of 2010, cameras began following our wild lives in Sin City as sexy singles looking to balance our wild Vegas social calendars with performances 6 nights a week. And like all reality shows, it wasn't without its fair share of drama. I was sick of being thought of as Hugh Hefner's ex, and the way I felt like Chris used me for publicity had left a bad taste in my mouth. So I was determined to stand on my own and not publicize my love life. Before the show's June 2010 debut, the cast and I were swept into a photo studio to shoot promotional photos for the series. Shortly before the show aired, E flew me to Los Angeles to shoot video promos for the network. You are the only one who is going to be in a shot by yourself. Everyone else was being shot with their co-stars or co-anchors, and I would be the only E personality featured solo, wearing a black version of the Marilyn Monroe 7-year itch wind-blown gown and elegant opera-length gloves. It's like, so nice to meet you, squealed a young, skinny brunette as she swept into my dressing room, seemingly taking stock of the hair, makeup, and wardrobe paraphernalia thrown everywhere. Like, when I first got an agent, I told him I want to be on the Girls Next Door, she babbled, her head bobbing from side to side as she spoke. And then he was like, no, you need your own reality show. Needless to say, some of the network talent wasn't necessarily thrilled to be sharing the spotlight with these young felons. Say what you will about how some of us became household names. None of us got there by breaking and entering. Between filming the series, watching it unfold on air, performing 6 nights a week, 2010 went by in a blur. I had little spare time, but was still managing to have a blast. When producers suggested the cast and I stopped by Hef's annual birthday party at the Palms, I wasn't particularly opposed to it. Hef's birthday party eventually moved to Moon Nightclub. The boss wants to leave. We couldn't have been there for more than 15 minutes. And just then, bright security flashlights whizzed past us, leading Hef's entourage out of the club. It was so unlike Hef to miss even a short chance to be in front of the cameras that I was actually concerned. Hef loved any chance to be on TV, and he loved Girls Next Door nostalgia. I couldn't help but think of Hef spending the better part of 5 seasons pounding into Bridget's, Kendra's, and my heads that we were replaceable, that the show would be just as successful in our absence. I don't like belonging to another person's dream. Lewis Carroll, Through the Looking Glass. To satiate the viewer demand, the network scheduled production to begin in fall 2010 in order to meet a January 2011 premiere date. In the television industry, fall and winter premieres are reserved for the more established shows, while some premieres tend to be for untested programming. Earlier that year, Hef had delivered a pilot to E titled The Bunny House that he hoped would be the second coming of the Girls Next Door and keep Playboy in himself on air. Claire, the Barbie Benson doppelganger, and I had become friends. In the wake of her breakup, Jada had been trying to shop around her own palette with no luck. But the network loved the idea of a girl you love to hate character, so when producers got wind of that, they placed her in the Bunny House as the resident shit stirrer. However, there were those who remained obsessed with the idea of resurrecting Girls Next Door, so Claire and Jada were planted on Holly's world in hopes that their characters would gain enough popularity among viewers that E would be forced to revisit the Bunny House concept. Producers insisted that per E, the show needed more drama, and Jada had signed on to the show, knowing she was going to play the bad girl. Honestly, That made my job much easier. I was happy to let her be the drama queen. If producers had a predetermined villain, then we wouldn't need to manufacture trouble between the existing cast, who at the time were my closest friends. I was sure E would never order the bunny house. In the media, our breakup played out as if I was unable to tame the ultimate bachelor, only to have him propose to the next blonde that shoved her way into the mansion. The few years I had been out of the mansion had been the best of my life so far. If I had married her, I wouldn't have had any of that. There I was, headlining on the Vegas Strip, making millions of dollars a year all on my own and starring my own television show. And they wondered if I missed living by an archaic set of rules with a spoiled man old enough to be my grandfather. After hearing this over and over again, I began to realize that what viewers took away from the girls next door was nothing like what life there was really like. So I didn't get the chance to see Holly's World, but I can imagine it was interesting. You know, it's like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? It's like, where in the world is this kidnapper? Who knows? Let's watch Holly's World. I returned to Vegas that night and went back to finishing season 2 of Holly's World. The producers found a couple of private investigators to track down Josh's birth mother, whom he had never met and knew nothing about. Investigators came through, and the episode turned out to be one of the most genuinely surprising and emotional ones of the series. Laura was mostly prompted by producers to hang out with Jada so that our resident villain had an excuse to be intertwined into our storylines. Though the show is better than ever, I found myself growing more and more distant from my closest friends. I began to sense something was wrong. The future seemed so bright that I was sure everything would just repair itself eventually. With a heavy sigh, he dropped the bomb on me that we were no longer filming Claire's pictorial. He said she threw a fit about it and that Half had no choice but to take me off the pictorial. Over the past few years, I definitely began to feel that for whatever reason, Crystal was trying to single white female me. In my off time during the day, I had held on to be my own person in some ways. So when Crystal even started copying my private life, I was a little creeped out. The first photo in her spread looked a lot like the opener for my final self-directed pictorial from February 2009, standing back to camera, naked, in between two theater doors. Sure, the fact that it was December, my birthday month, and my favorite time of year, could have been purely coincidental, but I knew how painstakingly produced every last detail of these shoots were, including the hat that sat next to Kristen on her centerfold, a fedora adorned with a single sprig of holly. I couldn't begin to imagine how mortified Health must have felt. She pointed down at a King Charles Spaniel, the dog Krista had left behind, who was sitting at her feet. Strange question with an obvious answer. But then again, the mansion was such a bizarre place, it would have been easy to assume that there was probably a weird ritual involved with taking one of the mansion's dogs outside. By then, we had all heard the gossip that Hef and Crystal couldn't come to terms on a prenup, leaving them at a stalemate just days before the wedding. After all, we had a film crew surrounding us, and we all implicitly knew that that topic was not something Hef would allow to be included in the special. But after being away from Playboy for 3 years, the photo that had once seemed so silly and playful struck me for the first time as incredibly pornographic, which of course was the original intention behind the image in the first place. Who knows? I may have been the one that initially had the thing framed, but by that point I was embarrassed that that photo was still up there for all to see. We each gave him a hug, offered him our condolences and words of encouragement, and then let him get back to his paperwork. Trust me, Half may be a publicity whore, but he would never risk his own bulletproof ladies' man's reputation for the sake of a headline. Crystal continued to milk any ounce of publicity she could get for months. Promoting her Playboy cover, the July 2011 cover had been designed to showcase Half's newest wife. But at the last minute, a sticker reading Runaway Bride had to be slapped over the top of it so the magazine wouldn't look dreadfully out of step and could simultaneously capitalize on the scandal. In Girls Next Door season six's DVD release, despite barely being in any of the episodes, Bridget, Kendra, and I were on the front of the box along with Crystal and the twins in an attempt to sell more copies. She appeared at a Heidi Montag hosted pool party, publicly pawned her engagement ring, hired an animal lawyer to get back the dog she left at the mansion months earlier, and made a well publicized visit to Howard Stern. Sure, her turn on Stern was a low blow, but I was disappointed to see Hef stoop to her level. In the end, they both lost that war. When the headlines disappeared, her new relationship ended, and people stopped caring about Hugh Hefner's ex-fiancee, Crystal. Came back to the mansion with her tail between her legs, and the pair wed in a low-key wedding ceremony on December 31st, 2013. I continued to receive letters from him after that, but I just threw them away because they were always only about him anyway. E welcomed a new president at the same time who decided she no longer wanted the network to be in business with Playboy. This hurt, since I have been trying so hard for the past few years to separate myself from that brand. Sure, Playboy got me on television, but it was also because of Playboy that I was taken off television. Truth be told, I was devastated by the cancellation. The cast, production, and I continued to bring in the ratings for the network. But Playboy cast a shadow over my life, and I couldn't escape it. I felt terrible that I could no longer provide my castmates with the spots on the show that had brought them so much success. I was worried that I would lose all my friends once they learned Holly's world was to be no more. Of course, that didn't turn out to be the case. Angel and I suffered an estrangement for a few years, but sometimes that's what success can do to friendships. I've been interviewed for the program before, but this time the entire episode was going to be about me. My story wasn't ready to be told. I hadn't achieved enough of my own outside of the mansion, and I didn't want the hour-long program to be a tribute to my days at Playboy. Naturally, Hef was interviewed for the special. You really think he would miss a chance to be on camera? And his only contribution was a chippy remark at my expense. He just couldn't resist an opportunity to belittle me and to make the story all about him. I was and continue to be truly humbled. Maybe I wasn't defined by the mistakes I had made after all. Maybe those decisions were what allowed me to become the person I was always destined to be. It's no use going back to yesterday because I was a different person then. Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. You're kidding me, right? I laughed, barely able to believe the suggestion. There were people looking to capitalize on the deterioration of our friendship, and I refused to allow them to benefit from it. I wanted to make sure that my appearance on her series felt organic, but I was beginning to get the impression that there was a hidden agenda and that they needed help with that because at that point, Kendra wasn't either one of those things. They continued to gripe, saying Kendra had no ambition, didn't do anything but sit on the couch, and had truly become famous for nothing. I busted my ass to create a successful post mansion life for myself, and I wasn't going to just hand over the reins for the chance to be on a show roughly 40 people will end up watching. Okay, maybe a little more than 40. While her tabloid coverage focused on positive things like her wedding and baby her first year out of the mansion, lately her headlines had devolved into negative things like why I left Hank, Kendra loses her baby, Kendra's secret breakdown and sex tape scandal. It would tear down everything I built to make myself an individual. They finally conceded before offering one final plea. But think about it. Did he really think I wanted back on TV that badly? I couldn't begin to imagine Kendra's peep show run. Sure, we've been on excellent terms since we left the mansion, but I knew for myself what a nightmare she could be to work with. As the conversation wore on, Kendra seemed to be getting more and more annoyed. We wrapped our scene, hugged goodbye, and I jumped back into my Range Rover with a 5 hour drive back to Las Vegas. After all, I had a show that night. Usually she was pretty quick in responding to my texts or tweets, but I didn't give it too much thought beyond that. In the beginning, I was told the network loves the idea for the premiere. Then it became the network loves the idea for the season finale. You know how she is. She never gets back to anybody. I could tell Kendra was annoyed and trying to be careful how she worded what she wanted to say. Kendra had apparently given an interview to a tabloid explaining that she wasn't friends with either of us, as if she were somehow better than everyone else. For someone who was all of a sudden trying to act like she was better than Bridget and me, she sure wasn't above using us for publicity when she needed it. For the first time in my life, I started to lay plans to become a crazy cat lady. I thought he was good looking and he seemed like fun, but when we started talking, most of the time through Twitter, I used to be Twitter obsessed. I wasn't really expecting things to get serious. That year marked my fourth year with the show, and by then I was not only playing Bo Peep, but had also adopted the singing Goldilocks role as my part of my performance. And while I wasn't eager to leave behind the cast and crew that had become like family to me, somehow staying didn't feel right. Something I couldn't even dare to dream about having for my own back then was now a reality, thanks to everything I had done after I left the series. Keeping a lid on our new edition for the 3 months was brutal, but necessary. I certainly be showing by then, and I'm pretty sure producers didn't envision their sexy lead with a growing baby bump. When I finally was able to break the news to my employers, we decided how long I would stay in the show through mid October 2012, which marked the fifth month of my pregnancy. And they began their search for a new headliner who could start a few months earlier than anticipated. People sometimes ask me if I was worried that performing while pregnant might somehow harm the baby. And my answer is, of course, not. I believe that many sacrifices need to be made in order to do your best as a parent, but I also believe you don't have to abandon your whole life. I vowed not to cry my last night, but that was impossible. These were tears of joy, the best kind. Before my dressing room door even fully shut behind me, I received word that a certain someone had already contacted Peep Show's producers, begging them to hire Kendra for the lead instead of the rumored frontrunner, Ice T's wife, Coco Austin. After I had spent months explaining to him why this idea made me so uncomfortable, I couldn't believe he had the audacity to even attempt such a betrayal. Mary's in the hospital, my old friend Brittany told me. Please tell her I love and miss her and that I wish I could be there. When Brittany tried to visit Mary, supposedly Crystal turned her away, saying Mary didn't want to see anyone. To the best of my knowledge, Health never visited Mary at the hospital, probably because he wasn't the best health himself and rarely left the mansion anymore, not because he didn't care about her. In fact, Mary was the only person I ever saw Health be truly candid in front of. Everyone else in his life, including his relatives and significant others, seemed to be held at arm's distance emotionally. Everything else that came from that place was laced with darkness, a hefty price tag, or an eventual knife in the back. The network wanted to order an hour-long special about our baby's birth. When I requested privacy for certain moments, no below the waist shots during birth, privacy during breastfeeding, the crew looked at me like I was crazy. And one of the cameramen said, "We weren't planning on shooting that anyway." Being surrounded by the crew, even in the delivery room, made me feel extra safe and supported during this new experience. Anyone who's pushed out a baby will hate me for saying this, but I actually enjoyed giving birth. Just 3 months after giving birth to Rainbow, I was officially an engaged woman. How ironic is that the baby's name is Rainbow? Pascal proposed with cushion cut 40 karat yellow diamond rings surrounded. I don't know. I think I just want to name it Rainbow. You know, like there's some, I don't know, fairy godmother. You're gonna name your baby Rainbow. Just joking. I'm not into fairy godmothers. Uh, Pascal proposed with a cushion cut 40 karat yellow diamond ring surrounded by pink and yellow diamond flowers, which was amazing. But the best part of the ring was that he designed it himself with me in mind. We had discussed marriage before, but with all the baby excitement, I was too preoccupied to focus on the when and the where of it. The bridal party and I were given the exclusive dream suite inside the park to get ready in. The ceremony was held at the Blue Bayou restaurant inside the Pirates of the Caribbean, and our reception was in my favorite part of the park, New Orleans Square. But let that not be the moral of my story. Marriage and family are certainly beautiful parts of life, but I believe those things can truly be appreciated only when we find love and respect ourselves first. Pasquale didn't come to me at a time in my life when I needed rescuing most. He came when I didn't actually need to be rescued at all. I want to apologize for the choices I made because all of them brought me to the wonderful place I am today. But rest assured, my journey is far from over. There ought to be a book written about me. That there ought. Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So we got a shout out to the editor for asking all the right questions and leaving no stone unturned. So, with her husband and daughter, Holly divides her time between Las Vegas and Los Angeles. And that has been the book. Down the Rabbit Hole, Curious Adventures, and Cautionary Tales of a Former Playboy Bunny, Holly Madison. So, still married. So, oh my God. So, not only is it ironic that she has a daughter by the name of Rainbow, but she also has a son by the name of Forrest. So, okay, that's just so ironic. So, not only is she that she got where we're kidnapped from, she got where the kidnapper attempted to take to, attempted to take the kidnap to. Isn't that weird how things be like, work out like that? You know, when everyone is dedicated as citizens to be involved with not only what's going on with them, but what's going on with society around them and in the world. Quite interesting. So again, that was the book Down the Rabbit Hole, and that concludes Down the Rabbit Hole. So unfortunately, we don't know how this is going to turn out, but I'm trying to confirm if it's just a hoax that there was a $25 million reward with regards to Osama bin Laden's. And we're still awaiting to get enforcement with regards to the reward to the truth of the Assad Shakur case. So that's $27 million in question. And I guess, this book is just another example of how, some things could just seem like so glamorous and so artsy and so awesome, or so obnoxious, and it has political relevancy. It has governmental transformation relevancy. So it's just another thing where don't judge, don't look down at somebody or what someone does, if it's not something you would do, or judge a person that puts out something, and their relationships when you have no idea, you don't have, especially when you don't have complete information as to why it all comes, as to why it all happens, or, why this one, or why is this connected, and what is this really about? So now she has a little Force Leonardo and a little Rainbow Aurora. And, and I guess another thing that I realized is that it's kind of taken for granted. I don't want to say that these being out there is, dangerous per se, but, I think what it is that when we're catching these offenders, it's like, I don't know if some try to hide behind innocence, or that they don't know it, or amnesia, or whatever. It doesn't change the fact that the offense is real, that, this offender is indeed the offender, and it doesn't change the necessity of justice and the necessity of the offenders meeting the consequences to it. For instance, the 9/11 terrorist attacker. Like, what, and it'd be like, Holly Madison with a little Forest Leonardo and a little Rainbow Aurora, not knowing that that has anything to do with the case, not knowing that what they're showing, or what she's showing, or what this one is showing, or what, Forest Leonardo is showing, what Rainbow Aurora is showing in it. Because it's purely innocence, just not knowing what Holly's world was showing, was just being herself in it, So it's, it is what it is. It's like, you still have to enforce the justice when, the truth points to an offender as, this is indeed, in fact, the offender that whose offenses resulted in this crime. So that is where we're at with, this is just one example. And I definitely don't want to downplay, the other people that showed up with regards to Playboy and put their bodies in it as being supporting or
please start bringing your items to the checkout at this time and start making your way to the nearest exit. I repeat, the time now is 4:30 and the Petersburg Public Library will be closed in 30 minutes.
So I was going to stop before I got cued that it was time to wrap up, but I decided to keep on going. So I definitely don't want to downplay anybody else's, that it was just about Holly Madison, but it's just a major piece in it. And, and I definitely don't want to ignore Jada being the villain when it came to Holly's world either. Some things I don't know every single thing, but I know what was, what was put in mind or what's connected to me. So what, how I can communicate or articulate, the crime or, with all these different pieces that people have, that security has awesomely recorded and put out there. I know that I can put those pieces together and able to see clear, because it's kind of like me being an amnesia in a way and waking up and having to be like, oh, so this is what happened. And, oh, and this is how it happened. And, oh, this is possibly, this is possibly an accomplice. And, oh, this prevented this because of this and that. Like, oh, it was this person, it was this date, and they've had records since this time. It's like, oh, you're like, you waking up to all of this, but it's like all these wonderful things, like all these wonderful recordings that and not just recordings in film and television and music, but in books like this, and it's a little weird, reading someone that's in it and not know, and it's just like, they're going through and it's like, like for instance, she's feeling like this and I'm being, I'm going through this and I'm feeling like this, and they not know, like to experience them not knowing, like all this history of it, your kidnapping, they not know what's going on, and this is how they were experiencing it or felt this way by this person, or, was introduced to, or met this angel and not know why this person was put in his life except for publicity, because that's was their perspective or whatever they were going through at that particular time. So that's a little weird, but that's the awesome thing about connection, like when it transcends being connected through, like, oh, this person because this person gave you a job, or because, this person can hook you up with this deal or give you a great deal on a house, or you can, move into this, buy this house or this person about to move from, like when you're not, when it's not like, if they know this person, they could be like this movie and this star in your movie, or you can be like this star in their movie. When it's not, when it transcends those type of connections and it's connecting in cases, it's connecting offenses to, offenses to, I don't want to say very important people, but or high level security people that's protected by high level security. I don't really want to say that, but when you're connected to things that really impact the public, on a major scale. So I find that to be the very rewarding and appreciative thing about what it is that I have, or what it is that we have, what this community serves. I find that to be the most, thing, especially when this community is so bombarded, like she's, was feeling like she was felt like this way, that this is all that she could be, you know, like this community is like, you know, like it doesn't talk, or it can't speak, or you can't do this, or you can't, like this is, even if it's not presented, even if it's like, oh, I love you, coochie coochie cool, still another perspective is like still that you don't do this, you don't talk, you can't move by yourself, I have to do this for you. It's still that. So it's like combating all of that. And, when it comes to fitness and family and connecting fitness and family and the whole behavioral health, and still managing to balance it with security and law. So it's like on one hand it's rewarding, but then on the other hand, it's, it still has that part of it that's like, like, huh? I did this for what? Huh? Who? Forrest has a connection to what? That's connected to me, and what? It's still that part of it. So I guess that's another biggest challenge, the belief aspect of it. So anyway, this has been the Late Late Show with BT. We have finished. Well, we haven't finished it in terms of the case being cleared. It's cleared from the perspective of knowing, who the offender is and what the charges are, but not from a perspective if there can be one when it comes to it means it's justice. So we have completed this book, but the case is still in progress, and it's gonna, it's not gonna be favorable to us until this offender has met his justice. So it's now January 2018, and we have no idea when that's going to be. Only that, of course, we prefer it being today, January 2018. Of course, that's the preference. But when you have so many other people involved, like the predator list and, President Trump and everything else, George Bush, it becomes very complicated. So again, this has been a Late Late Show with BT. Bye.